If you're wanting to dip your toes into a little bit of Christmas in July, this video is for you. I'm making 14 DIY Christmas ornaments using Dollar Tree, Hobby Lobby, and Dollar General clearance items, thrift flips, scrap pieces, just things you can find laying around, doing them on a budget, but they're super adorable. I hope that you enjoy it. Let's get started. All right, first up I have this piece of a spindle. I think this looks like it was maybe from the back of a chair, but a friend gave this to me that she probably got on the side of the road, and I've already used part of it for something else. So it's literally just a scrap. I'm going to sand this down, just trying to smooth it and clean it up a little bit. I did wipe it down, but I just wanted to get it cleaned up. So I'm just using my finger sander, and because it's, lots of little pieces. So I'm just going to go around and clean that up best I can. I also smoothed out the top and the bottom. And then I did wipe this down with a baby wipe just to get all of the dust off and give that a good cleaning. You can see it's not all fully sanded, but it was good. So now we're going to go in with a chippy brush and just a little bit of white paint. And we're going to just, not a lot of paint on there, do kind of like a dry brush, but I keep layering it. So it ends up being like a heavier dry brush. But I knew that I wanted the wood to peek through, which is another reason I wanted to sand it down, because I didn't want that yellow tone of the wood so much, but I did want you to be able to see that it was wood. So I'm just going to kind of go over this until I get the desired look and then let that dry. So just build. It's easier than taking the paint off. Start with a little bit and then move forward. While it is drying, I am going to take this little red bell. These are probably from the Dollar Tree, maybe Dollar General. I don't know, but it was in my stash, and I'm just using a little bit of brown paint and a stencil brush and dabbing that on. I wanted this to not look as new and shiny. I wanted it to look a little bit older, and then I'm kind of just letting it dry a little bit, and then I dab it with a paper towel. Just, I'm not trying to go for like a heavy brown look, just to make it look a little bit more old and rustic. And once that is all done, I also have this hardware piece, these little, I think they're called, are these? No, I can't remember what these are called, but I found these in my little hardware box, and I dabbed on the brown paint, which I didn't end up letting it dry enough, and it ended up kind of coming off of the metal pieces, but whatever. I'm sealing this with just some Mod Podge. I sealed these pieces, the hardware pieces too, and I think that's where some of the paint came off because it wasn't fully dry. But same thing on my bell. I just was careful to not let any of the Mod Podge, get gob up in like the stars or the cutout at the top or anything like that. So I'm just using my needle nose pliers to hold this and try to screw these little, I can't even remember what they're called. I want to say eye hook, but I don't know if that's right. Maybe they are. Screwing that in. This would be helpful if you had a little tiny drill bit to get the hole started. I did not. But this one went in pretty good, and I'm just screwing that into the top, and then we're going to do the same thing on the bottom piece. Now the bottom was a little bit harder, so I'm just using little scissors, little tools, whatever I could find to try to get the hole started. So this may not be the easiest way to do it, but it's a way to do it if you don't have power tools or you're just working with what you got. But I did ultimately get this in. It just took me a little bit. I really had to press on it while it kind of got started, and then I was able to just kind of screw that in. So now with our bell, we're going to just tie a little piece of twine, and I'm going to feed that through the bottom. Decide which end you want to be the top and the bottom of that spindle piece. It's totally up to you. And I was deciding, do I want the bell to hang down further or not? And I decided I didn't really want it hanging down far because it was going to wobble enough without it hanging down far. So I just tied the string, the twine, nice and tight up at the top. But that's going to be obviously according to your personal preference. If you're new here, I want to welcome you. My name is Leanne. I like to share budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel. I love crafting for Christmas, but I do crafts all year long, and I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss out on my future ones. So I went to hang a little hanger on the top piece, and when I pulled it, I don't know what happened. It broke. It didn't just come out, it broke. Like the metal broke. So I guess I didn't know my own strength. So, yeah, I was just showing you there. It just totally broke right off. So I am going to thread the twine through, and then I'll show you how I'm fixing this little situation here. I just thread in the loop through it and then pull the loose ends through the top.
And then I tied a knot at the top of that to tie the loose ends together. So hopefully I described that well enough and you can see it well enough. Now, we're going to just use some hot glue to reattach this, and it seems to be holding just fine. Maybe not ideal if you were selling these or giving these away, I don't know, but I feel like the hot glue does hold pretty good with the wood, even though we have metal here. I don't often use wood hot glue on metal, but it seemed to work just fine. I do not have a Christmas tree set up to show this to you, and we are preparing to move, so I can just show this to you laying down, but actually I could have held it up, which you'll see in future ones, but I love how this came out. Let me know what you think. Up next, I went to my pantry and pulled out some cinnamon sticks, and then I have this red and white jute twine or jute cord, and I'm just going to make a little cinnamon stick bundle. I was just kind of messing with them a little bit, and to make sure they stayed, I am going to use a little bit of hot glue to help hold them in place so that I'm not relying on that jute I don't know, is that jute? That's not jute. Isn't jute the material? I don't know. Baker's twine? Is this like a thicker baker's twine? I don't know. Glue the cinnamon sticks together. I'm wrapping this around like 3 times, and then we're going to tie it in a knot. And honestly, I feel like you could almost leave it as is. This is another little ornament. I love making little ornaments, and I think it's fun to have a mismatched ornament. And that's what they, back in the day, they were making all of their stuff because they didn't have the money for it, and they weren't going to spend their resources on it. So I thought this was fun. I am going to use a little bit of greenery here just to embellish this a little bit. I just used kind of my little scraps that I had trimmed off of another project and just used a little bit of hot glue to help hold it there. I bumped the camera because I burnt myself, but that's okay. And then some little red berries off of a pick and just put that on top. And then you will just tie the remaining twine or ribbon, whatever you decide to use, up at the top to make a little knot so you can hang it up. Easy peasy. This is another really, really quick DIY to make, not much to it. And I just think it's so cute. Honestly, without the hanger, you could also use this on like a tiered tray for just this cute little bundle, but lots of different options of how you could display it. But I think it's very pretty, super sweet. Let me know what you think. Up next, I have a little ball lid from a jar, and I had, for some reason, a bunch of extra ones of these. I don't know why, so I threw them in my craft stash. I have this sparkly gold, what is it called? Vinyl from Dollar Tree. So it's the cheap stuff. I've heard it's not super great for Cricut, but I don't have a vinyl cutting machine anyway. So I just traced a circle out. We're going to go a little bit more gaudy with this ornament here, but it was very reminiscent of, I don't know, ornaments that I remember seeing. So we're going to stick that on here. I don't know how well it really sticks on the metal, but I end up using some hot glue for some embellishments and around the edges, so it all works out okay. Gonna trim, just stick that down and then trim off the edges here, and that was sticking to my scissors, so that was annoying. But I was so excited that I found these red pipe cleaners in my stash, because I feel like pipe cleaners just kind of scream, I don't know how old is vintage, but definitely screams like something from my childhood, from the 80s or 90s, but also older than that. I am not, by the way, saying the 80s and 90s is vintage. Maybe it is now, but I still think of like maybe 50s and 60s. But regardless, I thought that this pipe cleaner, or maybe they're called chenille stems, but when I was a kid, we called them pipe cleaners. I thought this was the perfect touch for this. So I'm just haggling that around the edge, just kind of holds the vinyl down a little bit, and it gives a nice border. It covers up the edge of the lid. I just thought it was a great little touch. So we're going to embellish. This is another tree like from Dollar Tree that I had previously cut the back of it off or something so it lays more flat. And then I am carefully cutting off a part of the tip too, but covering it with my hand so it doesn't go flying, and you don't want little pieces of metal to go flying in the air. And I'm just putting on a good amount of hot glue here and laying this down. I accidentally dropped it. We're going to straighten it out, and then I'm just going to wipe my finger. The glue's cooled a little bit, and wiping it off of that sparkly vinyl. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think of when you hear the word vintage? I feel like there's so many definitions online of vintage, so maybe none of you think that any of this looks vintagey, but I do. So I was out of cotton balls, so I just had a white pom-pom, in my stash, and so I just cut that up and it kind of turned into cotton ball material, and we're just going to glue chunks of that here for a little bit of snow. Even the gold, see how the vinyl's like wrinkling on the edges? That doesn't even bother me. I just feel like it adds to the vintage feel. So I'm going to take a little piece of this pipe cleaner and twist it up to make a little hanger as well. And this one was so fun. I decided to hold this up in the air at least so you could see it better. Again, no tree to display my ornaments on at this point, but I thought this one was super fun, and so many different variations, little figurines that you could also glue on here. I love it. All right, up next we have a mason jar ring, and it's big. It doesn't go in any of my jars, and I don't have like the middle part for it. So it's been in my kitchen cupboard forever, and we're moving, and I was packing things up, and I was like, I have no use for this. So into the stash it goes. But we're going to use one of these red bells, again, from my stash, but you can get them at Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Hobby Lobby, Walmart. Very inexpensive I have a pack of them. And we're just gonna get it a little bit dirty with some brown paint. And then I'm threading through with this gold. This actually, I think, came with the bells. So it's kind of, I normally wouldn't use it, but it's a little bit gaudy. Maybe this isn't super gaudy, but tying that on, tied a little loop at the top. I wanted to show you this mason jar ring. Already looks a little rusty. It's got some flaking or some rust on it, and so I didn't want to do anything to that. And I'm tying the knot a little bit lower because I was trying to decide how low I wanted this bell hanging from the middle of the ring, and I wanted the knot to be, where the glue was. So I fussed with that, and I burnt myself, I think, again there. I just grabbed a tool to elevate the little ring to make this easier to attach this, and then use my little metal pick to hold that in there while the glue hardened, and then trimmed that down. So that is the basis for the ornament. But now we're going to take another pipe cleaner, and I did thread it through the string where the bell was to add additional ability to like hold it up there, and twisted it, and then twisted it again at the top and trimmed it down, and that's going to be our little hanger. And I decided to add a little bit more of embellishment. Well, not more, there really wasn't any. Add a little bit of embellishment for this one. And once more using some greenery scraps, and I just took a couple short pieces and twisted them together kind of like in an X, just because I thought it'd be easier to attach them this way up at the top. And I also had these little plastic pine cones, which plastic is, to me, screams vintage. So again, I don't normally use this type of thing. I don't know where these plastic pine cones came from, probably off of a piece from Dollar Tree that I had redone, and I just saved the pine cones, and I hot glued this to the top, and I love how this one came out. Again, pretty simple, but has a lot of old things in it, so it just gave that old vintagey feel to me. For this next one, I'm starting off kind of at the end, but I have this white sparkly ribbon from Dollar Tree, and this, I didn't have any ribbon that really worked well for the project I was about to make. So I'm using this, I'm cutting it in half because I needed a thinner ribbon, and then it's sparkly and it sheds like crazy. So I'm Mod Podging it, and I have a little plastic mat here, and I'm just gonna do that and then let it dry, and we'll come back to it later. But I just thought I'd share this with you because I'm really trying to just use what I have. Like I said, we're moving, and I'm just trying to use up the things that I have on hand already. So that's drying. We're going to move on to these Christmas light bulbs. Old school. I bought them at a rummage sale years ago. I actually used to have a ton of them, and I got rid of a lot of them before I moved this last time, or this previous time. I don't know when I moved. But I had a few left, and I wanted to make some fun ornaments. I've used these before for other ornaments, but I didn't want to paint the bulb itself because I wanted it to just look, those are like the old colors that were used. You don't see all of that in lights anymore. So anyway, I'm using a little piece of twine. I hot glued that on the metal piece at the top of the light bulb, and then I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue and wrap that twine around. And that also helps secure the sides that I initially glued down as well. And then if you need to, you can put a little bit more hot glue at the top to hold down the end of the twine. And we're just going to do that on all three of these. Obviously do as many of them as you want, but I decided to do all three. So I'm making a little bow. I wanted a very simple bow, and I saw an image somewhere with a bow like this, and I just thought it looked cool and old. I thought this ribbon would be hard to tie because of just the sparkle, even though I Mod Podged it, just the material of it. So I am just making basically two sides of a bow. I'm making a little loop, I'm gluing it down, and this also keeps all of the front because this is not a double-sided ribbon. And so I just made a couple of loops, and then I'm hot gluing them across the center and just cut the tail of the bow at an angle. This is a very simple bow here, but I'm gonna hot glue that onto the twine, and I really liked it. I liked the old, I don't know, something about it just screamed old to me. But I love this little set of ornaments. I cannot wait to put these on my tree. They will be going on my tree, but let me know what you guys think of these and if you would make something similar, and let me know down in the comments which one of these is your favorite. I picked up this ornament from the Christmas craft section from Hobby Lobby. You can see the price tag says $1.99. They're at least 50% off, and if it was in my stash, that means I bought it when it was more than 50% off. So it's a great base for DIY, and I wanted to do something kind of, I don't know, in my mind it felt classic. So I mixed together this red paint with a little bit of black paint. I wanted it to be a little bit, I don't know, not as vibrant, I guess. But I gave this, really only took one good coat. I just had to kind of do one side, and then I did dry it with my heat gun. Not like on a low temp. Didn't want to get it hot, too hot, because you don't want the paint to get sticky. But that way I could turn it over and paint the other side. And we're just going to give this a good base coat of red paint. And I let that dry thoroughly. I think I let it dry overnight, partially just because I'm busy right now. But I have this gold metallic paint, and I wanted to highlight the edges, and I wanted it to look, I didn't mind it looking like hand painted and not perfect. So if this is not the look you like, you might want to use a paintbrush, or you might want to tape it off with some painter's tape. But I'm just dipping my finger in this gold paint, and I'm going along each of the edges. So we're highlighting the shape of the ornament. And the shape of the ornament in and of itself kind of looks more traditional to me, a little bit more old school, or as a viewer said, old-timey. And so I know that the lines are not perfect on this, but that's okay. If you look at hand-painted ornaments that you even can pay good money for, I'm not saying this is worth good money, but if you look at those, they don't all have just these perfect, pristine lines. They look hand-painted. And so I'm just going over this with my finger, a gentle touch. I'm alternating what fingers I'm using to get that gentle touch, and we're just going to go over the edges. And that is all I did for this DIY, for this ornament. I love how this one came out. I went a little bit extra on the top and the bottom just to highlight them, and that is it. So let me know what you think of this one. For this ornament, we're going to start with an ornament from Dollar General. Once again, it says it was $1. I definitely paid less than that. Probably likely 25 cents or maybe even less. So I did not have all of my handy dandy tools here. I was trying to pop off this metal piece, but the Dollar General ones are made pretty decently. So there was some staples in there, and it took me a little while, but I wasn't filming when I finally got it figured out. So we are going to just pry that off. I'm trying to be careful because I do want to reuse that metal piece. That second one actually broke through. The staple stayed on the ornament. So I'm just pressing down the metal. It's just fine. Pulled out the other staple. And I'm sorry my camera is shaking the way I have my current setup, which is just temporary. My camera is mounted to the table surface that I'm working with. But we're going to sand this down. I'm using my finger sander. I don't have to get it all of it off, but it will have just better paint coverage if I can get most of that off. So I'm going to sand down really good on the red, and then also sand off that writing in the middle. And this was actually a pretty cute ornament by itself, but anyways, we're going to just sand that down, and we have a clean slate. So when you're looking at stuff at the end of the season clearance, just look at the shape and what it's made of to see if it's something that you think you can do your own little DIY with. We're going to give this a good coat of white paint. I'm using Waverly chalk paint. I think that was Snow White. I am trying to, this ornament has the ridges for like slats, almost like it was a shiplap kind of thing. And so I'm wanting to leave the wood or the paint out of that line as best I can. So I'm just doing my best to do that. We're going to end up cleaning it up later anyway, but that's kind of why I'm going a little bit more cautiously here. But it really only took one coat of paint, but it might take more. And then once that was fully dry, we're going to put a good coat of Mod Podge on and let that dry. Now, I was intending to bring over my mini iron to my craft space. I've said in previous videos I'm currently crafting at my parents' because we are in the process of moving, and this way I don't have my craft stuff everywhere, which is such a huge blessing. And I forgot to bring over my mini iron, and I could have gone back home because my current home is in the same neighborhood as my parents'. Unfortunately, we're leaving the neighborhood and moving further away. But I didn't go home to get the mini iron. I could have also asked my mom to use a household iron. So mini iron's great. Household iron, you just want to use no steam and put down your tissue paper or napkin or whatever and a piece of parchment paper and then iron it. Well, I decided, I've heard people say maybe your heat gun would work. So here is my answer on this. It does work. It does work. But you need to be careful when you use your heat gun at a really high temp. I usually don't use it at a very high temp. So I actually almost burnt a little bit of the paper and I melted my mat a little bit. You can see there. So, and it's not as smooth. The iron-on method really gives you a smooth look. So it worked, and it's not bad. It's not like horribly wrinkled, but hey, I experimented and it turns out it worked. So, but I would definitely recommend the iron-on method. I think works a lot better. I am gently just going to sand away to get the excess tissue paper off. I love this tissue paper. I've used it many times. I think it was from the Dollar Tree at one point. I'm noticing there that there's some wrinkles on the tissue paper, but it's very pretty. So I painted the ornament white because you would see, you know, the background through the tissue paper, but use any tissue paper, or you could use a napkin. You could also Mod Podge paper on, but I really just like this ornament. So as you see, I kind of use a tool to break through the tissue paper on the cracks there. And then I'm going to cover this with Mod Podge, and then we're going to go back and kind of clean up those edges again. So this didn't have as good of adherence when I do the iron-on method, so I needed that coat of Mod Podge on top. And I'm trying to avoid the cracks again where the faux shiplap, I don't know what else to call it, is, because I wanted to clean that up. So I tried going in with a little piece of sandpaper, but that was really tearing up my tissue paper, and I think it's because it just wasn't glued as much as if I'd used the iron. So I'm using my little pick. This is I think it's a vinyl tool from the Dollar Tree. And then I'm also using, which I think is also for vinyl, that scraper tool. I use them for all sorts of things, to hold down the edge of the tissue paper. And then I slowly just went through and just kind of picked away at that because I wanted you to be able to see those lines. I wanted it to look like it was some wood slats. So I'm just showing you how I made that happen. Maybe not the quickest route to happen, but it did work. I decided that the metal piece, I didn't want it to be that silvery metal, so we're going to paint it, and to help the paint stick better, I did do a base coat of Mod Podge, and then we're going to go in with this gold metallic paint. This took, I think, about 3 coats in order for it to get some good coverage, but I wanted that shiny gold. That just feels old-timey, vintagey, traditional to me. And I used my heat gun carefully in between. I lowered that. That's still not at a high temp there because you just don't want to do that. And then I did probably coat it again with Mod Podge, but I don't think I showed that. Once my metal piece was fully coated, I had, I think, like I said, 3 coats, and it was all dry, and I had the Mod Podge on. I just wanted to make sure if there was an up and down, it was about the same, but it looked better one way or the other, so I chose that. And I'm just using some hot glue to attach that. Just be careful because hot glue on metal will be hot. So I'm using my little finger protector kind of to press that down. But I love how this came out. Let me know what you think. There are so many different options when you find an ornament. Maybe it's on clearance or just from your stash that you don't like or use anymore. There's so many different ways that you can make it over and have it fit your style and your taste. This beaded garland came from Dollar General. Originally $4. I probably paid $1 for it is my guess. And I'm going to make that over. So we're going to cut off the tassel and reuse that in the future. And I'm going to take off some beads here. This is such a simple one. I'm basically taking beads. They're already colored, so I didn't need to paint them. And I'm just making a little pattern, and we're going to thread them onto some twine and make a little ornament. This reminds me of something that maybe you would see that was done with more like of a crystal-y bead instead of a wood bead. I was struggling, so I'm just taping up the end of the twine to help thread that through, and that made this process go a bit faster. But there are lots of, I don't know, I feel like I've seen things like this, but this is super simple. We're just stringing up some beads, and I chose a size pattern and a color pattern. And then I'm just going to tie the top with a loop. And I don't know if I love this as the hanger, but I don't know how else I would do it unless I just put a knot in it and put an old like metal hook in it. I feel like I might like that a little bit better than the twine loop to hang it on the tree, but whatever. It's what I did. So, and then at the bottom, I'm just going to do a knot, and I will put a dab of hot glue to help secure that well. And that is it for this one. It's hardly a DIY, but it is because I did it myself. But I just think, again, it gives that old vintagey feel, and there's a lot of different variations of this that you could do. Moving along, I have this ball ornament. You can get these at Dollar Tree. You can get them at any craft store, Walmart, wherever. And I saw something like this somewhere, and I thought, this is so cute and simple to do. And again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but like the vintagey look to me is like do it yourself that may even look like you did it yourself. And it's just simplicity is how things were. And so I'm just taking these red pipe cleaners or red chenille stems. They're kind of a red sparkly. I cut them into smaller pieces, wrap them around the end of a paintbrush, and I'm just feeding these into this ball. So this is another super quick, just DIY ornament idea. Pop the top back on, and I just used a thin silver string that was from a pack of probably another ornament to hang this up. Just a classic ornament hook would work as well. And I just think it sparkles and looks so pretty. It's going to look great on a tree where the lights are going to pick up on all of that. It's simplicity to the max, but still really pretty, at least in my opinion. I have another bead garland that I picked up from clearance from Dollar General. And this one, we're going to use some of the beads. And then we're also in another DIY going to use that Christmas tree. So save everything when you take stuff apart. So I am picking out the green beads, and once again, I don't have to paint them. This is fantastic, and I'm just going to pull out what I want, and we're going to make another pattern based on the size, but you could also do multiple colors as well. So first I wanted to try this white to twine, and that ended up taking me a little while to get the beads on it, but once I did, I threaded them on in the pattern that I wanted, but I wanted to make a little beaded wreath ornament, and it did not have the shape that I wanted to. No matter how tightly I packed the beads on, it was still just going to be a floppy looking wreath. That was simply not the look I was going for. So I took one of those red chenille stems and I am just going to thread that through. Now, instead of restringing the whole thing, I figured while they were on the string, let me see if I can fit the pipe cleaner through there. And I was able to do so. The pipe cleaner it's not hard. Most of you know what they're like. Not like it can't be molded and bent, but it definitely is going to hold the shape a lot better than just that little thin string thread was going to do. So once I got all of the beads moved over onto the pipe cleaner, I'm just twisting them at the top to make our little wreath. And then I wanted to add a little bow. And I thought, what is more vintagey looking than a red sparkly pipe cleaner? So I'm just taking one of those and we're just twisting it onto itself. They're wire, so this is pretty simple to do. I was able to even redo it a couple of times, and we're making a bow. And then I decided I did not like using the excess pipe cleaner for the hanger. I just didn't like it. So I'm twisting it on really good so that the beads don't come undone. And then we're going to trim that down. You can put a little dab of hot glue on there to help ensure that you hold it, or ensure that it holds. I'm using a white thread here for my hanger for now. I will be cutting off that white thread and using an old like metal Christmas tree hook on this in the future, but once again, I don't have all my Christmas stuff out, and I'm not about to take it out because we're moving. So I did the white string for now, and we're going to put a little dab of hot glue on top to hold on our red, I was going to say our red ribbon, our red bow. And this is, to me, a very sweet vintagey ornament. This one was another quick and simple one to do. Not a whole lot to it, but a lot of variation, anything for the ribbon, any different pattern or colors for the beads. This is more of a blue-green, or I'm sorry, a blue-green than like a Christmassy green, but I still really like how this one came out. For the Christmas tree that I pulled off of a beaded garland that I got on clearance, we're going to make another ornament. So I'm using my heat gun to just soften that adhesive. This allows the sticker to come off really easily. And then we are going to Mod Podge. My intention was to make this a double, like leave the other side as is. So, you know, ornaments turn around, so you want both sides to look great. But we're going to Mod Podge that with a nice good coat. And I have this pack of paper that I have from Hobby Lobby and pulled out this holly and berry pattern. I think it has a nice old-timey look. I'm coining the phrase. I can't remember which one of my viewers said that, but I like it. I'm not coining it. I'm using her phrase, old-timey. I'm using my brayer to really adhere that on. Once again, the iron-on method would work well here, but I gave that a good amount of time to dry, and then I'm going in with my little scissors, and I'm cutting here the best I can to get it. It's kind of hard because they're curved at the points, and you can't really do that with, you know, little pointed scissors. If you're enjoying this video and you like budget-friendly, quick DIYs, please give this video a thumbs up. That helps out my channel. It lets YouTube know that you're liking it. That makes them more likely to share it with others. It's such an easy way to help out a creator. So I am very carefully sanding the rest of the edges to get the excess paper off. I am sanding away from the paper, and this was taking the paint off the edge of the ornament as well, and so I just kind of went with it, and I really roughed it up all the way around. But this did, and then I did fold up some sandpaper to try to get in the corners there. This did end up breaking off a little bit from the back side of the ornament because it's just an MDF. This is not like wood, so I really do need to go back and probably touch up the other side so that with paint, I'll probably just paint it so that it just looks nice on the other side since ornaments do turn around. Once that was all done, I used my scissors to poke back through that hole that was originally there. And we're going to thread through some twine. This was twine taken off of a sign from the Dollar Tree. So it has these little plastic pieces on the ends, like kind of like the ends of shoelaces. So I end up cutting them off, but it did make it easier to thread this through. Just make sure when you tie on whatever you're using for your hanger on an ornament that you do it in a fashion that will still allow the ornament to hang facing forward. And then I did thread a little red bead on there from one of the beaded garlands that I had taken apart just for that little pop, and I thought it pulled out the berries in the paper that I chose. And that is it for this little ornament. Let me know what you think. I love these quick and easy DIYs, super simple and very, very budget friendly. This DIY is just going to be using a scrap piece of wood. I am sanding it down to smooth it out a little bit, but it's not going to be a perfectly smooth piece of wood. It's okay to use your scraps. I did try to round out the corners a little bit, like each of the corners, and the top and bottom, really just to make sure paint went on a little bit easier, but it does not need to be perfect. And then we're going to give this just one solid coat of white paint, maybe 2 coats if you're using acrylic paint. But I've seen so many little ideas like this. We're going to make a little snowman. Once that paint is all dry, we're going to go ahead and make our little snowman face. You don't have to be an artist for this. I'm using you'll be able to tell, obviously, I am not an artist, the end of a paintbrush to do the eyes and the mouth. And it was a little bit too small, so I kind of doubled back over it, and then they weren't perfect circles. It's all right. A little dotting tool that I have from Dollar Tree might have also been helpful. But if you want to try to get creative with your snowman face, go ahead and look on like Pinterest or something for just snowman faces, get some ideas. And then I'm using a small paint brush to make my little carrot nose. The first one I had was not pointy enough, so it was hard to make my pointed carrot nose, but I just did it off to the side, just keeping the snowman face really simple. Let's not overcomplicate this. As it was, I kind of overcomplicated the eyes. at some point you try to fix it too much, you can ruin it. So just let it be. Now for our hanger, we're going to make this into a little ornament. I'm just taking this really thick rope and we're going to tie that into a knot and trim that down. Then I'm going to take that knot and put a good healthy amount of hot glue and just put that right on the top. And I'm going to hold that until that glue really sets up. You could also drill something in if you want, but I just was going to keep this one pretty simple. I propped my snowman face up on some scissors just to give me a better angle for looking at it without getting my head in the way. And I'm just trimming down some scrap pieces of greenery and berries. I keep all of the scraps in little bags, and we're going to use some tweezers to help us apply the little berries. But I just wanted to do a little embellishment on the snowman. I thought the greenery and the berries was cute, and this is really simple, very quick and easy to make. Would be a fun one to do with kids or just some girlfriends around or just by yourself, whatever. But I love this one. Let me know what you think about this sweet little ornament. I think this one was really fun to make and very easy. This was another Hobby Lobby clearance find from St. Patrick's Day. I can't see the original price, but it was not much. So we're going to once again sand this down, make it easier to cover the green up. But I saw this and was like, well, this would be a cute little ornament. But I actually didn't make mine necessarily to be an ornament. It could also just be a little sign. It'd be cute on like a tiered tray. You don't have to even use the hanger. But we're going to sand it, wipe it down, and then I'm using my heat gun on the back to just take off these stickers. The heat gun just helps loosen up the adhesive, and it comes up super easy when you do it like this. Now I'm going to give this whole thing a coat of white paint. I am emphasizing on the frame because we are going to cover the center part, but I did end up putting some paint down there too, just to make sure if what we're covering with didn't go all the way to the edges or something. I didn't want any of the green popping through. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs with you here on this channel. Please consider subscribing to my channel before you leave so you don't miss out on my future ones. All right, so now we are going to cut down, well, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to rip it. I'm using this scrapbook paper. This is from Hobby Lobby, from one of those like smaller packs. And I was trying to, I knew there was a part like that I knew which portion of the paper I wanted to be using. So I'm just folding it back and forth so that I can get a nice tear to it. And then I do end up using scissors for the rest of it, however you want to do it, but you got to get it down to the right size to fit in the center square. I'm just using my fingernail to crease it, and then I will trim it with my scissors, which I was a little nervous about because I feel like I never get it straight. Even, I don't know. It was fine. It was totally fine. It fit in there nicely. Pop that out, and we're going to go in there with some Mod Podge and put that in there. So this is a thicker paper. It did not have any wrinkling, no worry whatsoever there. But I'm just going to give a good coat of Mod Podge and place that down into the center. I am using this little squeegee tool. This is from Plaid, and this is very, very handy. I'm kind of wiping off the excess Mod Podge that comes out as I scrape it, but this gets in the corners to make sure it's attached really, really well, and it works great. And then I have this little green sticker. Well, I pulled the sticker piece off of it, but this is a wood piece from Dollar Tree. And I loved the brightness of this, the sparkle. I just felt like it was a good contrast, but you could put whatever you want. You could paint that if you have something like that and it's just too bright for you. But I loved it. I thought this sign was so cute, so sweet, and very simple. And whether you hang it on a tree, on a little, peg or something, or just use it as a little sign. I love making Christmas ornaments, so I thought I'd throw another one in this video for you. So I have two wood slice pieces. One has a hole in it and one does not. The one without a hole, I'm not sure where it came from. I think maybe a friend gave it to me. The one with a hole in it came from a pack from Hobby Lobby, I believe. The one was a little bit rough, so I sanded it down just a little bit to make the paint get on there better. And I'm going to do my best with a small paintbrush to paint the center of both of these. Now, if you have both of them that have holes in them, that'll be fine because you'll end up kind of covering that area up anyway. But I just have two, one that's slightly larger than the other because we're going to make ourselves a little snowman ornament. It might have been easier to take the string off, but I didn't, so I just painted around it. Then once those were both dry, I'm going in to paint my little snowman face. I'm using the end of a paintbrush and then the tip of a paintbrush to do the nose. I don't know if this is always the easiest way. I don't get perfect circles. You can do whatever you want. I realized afterwards my dotting tool may have worked better for this, and then I tried to clean up a little mess up, and then I ended up making it worse. But it's okay. You can always repaint, and I do. I end up cleaning that up, and then I'm just using a small tipped paintbrush to do the orange carrot nose. I'm just using some simple acrylic paints for these, nothing fancy whatsoever. And you can see our little snowman is coming together. I thought the buttons were a little too small, so I went back and then I was like, you need to just stop before you mess it. So I did. Didn't want to mess it up. So I'm flipping my snowman over and I'm cutting some popsicle sticks to attach this. Now, the one was slightly not as thick as the other, so I just doubled up the popsicle stick in one place, and that made the difference, and this will help hold our two pieces together. Now, I realize it would have been easier if I had done this before painting on the face, because it ends up being slightly crooked, which is fine. It's not like snowmen are like perfectly symmetrical. I don't know if you grew up in a place where there was snow, but making a snowman perfectly symmetrical is just not really likely. But I would attach it together before painting on the face if I were to do this again. So now I'm just going to take some ribbon. You can also use a strip of fabric, whatever you want to use for our scarf. And I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue in place to like tie it on there, so to speak, because I'm not really tying it just because of the shape and everything. It wouldn't really stay put. So I'm just using a little dabs of hot glue here and there to crisscross it and then attach it to lay the way that I want to make our little scarf. And then I'm going to just cut some little angles on the end of the scarf. And that is it. You could add on a hat or add on something else if you wanted to, but I decided to keep it pretty simple here. And I think this is a really cute ornament. It's going to make a great addition to my Christmas tree.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new, and leave me a Christmas emoji down in the comments to let me know that you are here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.